All right. Peace, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to the judges recap. We had Rio versus K.O.T. Come on in. Excuse my appearance. It's rainy and cold and miserable in Philly today. So y'all get in this how I just look when I'm lounging around. Look, okay. It's one of those days. I was busy all day, but hey, Psycho been live all day, basically, right? All right. Peace, everybody. So what did we have? We had, is the American lifestyle beneficial for Black Americans? Rio versus K.O.T. So very close. K.O.T had technical issues, which hurt him. I can't wait to get into the notes. Mo was the other judge. I can't wait to see what her notes are and then to share my notes. So as everybody saw, it was very close with the chat. The chat went for Rio by a couple of points. And I don't know if anybody's going to be surprised here, but Mo had Rio as well. She had Rio up by 1 point, and I had K.O.T. And I had him up by 1 point, and I will be happy to explain why, how it turned out this way. But overall, I had a 40 for Rio, and I had a 41 for K.O.T. And then for Mo, she had a 39 for Rio and a 38 for K.O.T. So their scores came out to a tie, 79-79. But again, wins and losses show that Mo went for Rio and the chat went for Rio. So that's where Rio gets the win. But as you can see, it was extremely close. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the notes in a second. Hey, Lou. Hey, Mansa, Emmanuel, Corey, peace to you. Hey, B1, peace. JJ, Hot Lead, peace to you. Hey, Rio, peace. I'm subbed, Rio. I love what you're doing on your channel. Very good. And DOS, peace to you. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and get into the notes real quick. So because we are a little bit behind, I don't want to hold up the after party. All right, so I will be right back. Okay. All right, let's get into these notes. We are going to start with Rio's opening. All right, my notes for Rio's open read. He did mention choice, agency, and real progress. I think those were his 3 pillars. He said freedom of entrepreneurship and ability to shape our communities and businesses. He defined lifestyle and what it encompassed. He said choices will be key in his argument. He defined beneficial. He said his opponent will have to demonstrate nothing has been helpful, useful, or good to Americans. Or to us, Black Americans. He listed advantages of benefits that lead to tangible progress, wealth accumulation, and education. He sourced Swarthmore EDU, power of choice, improves livelihood, and essential to autonomy. He said it's a necessity to success in the U.S. Okay, and then Mo's notes say choice, agency, and real progress based on legal protections. He sourced Cambridge Dictionary, where he defined lifestyle as systems of values, behavior patterns, defined beneficial as helpful, useful, or good. She said good framework by looking for measurable advantages, intangibles, shared HR Marcus and Barry Schwartz as a source. Very impressive for me. I had a 9 for him with the open, the way he framed the argument, and Mo had an 8 for Rio. Okay, now we'll get into K.O.T's open. My notes say studies show American lifestyle comes with high stress, poor nutrition, and social isolation environments. Defined lifestyle and included it comes with challenges. Sources: University of Delaware, that American lifestyle is centered on the American dream. He sourced American lifestyles, high productivity costs, examples of 40-hour work week to maintain it. He framed how the lifestyle is not set up for Black Americans because the majority live check to check and do not enjoy the full social benefits or the benefits of healthcare at an affordable cost. Okay, and he had 8s across the board for his open. So at this point, Rio was ahead. I had him at a 9 for his open. All right, now we will get into Rio's premise, his presentation. My notes say economic mobility. Blacks have grown in entrepreneurship and economic gains over the years. Brookings says growth from 2017 to 2023 has grown 62%, generating billions in revenue. Impact of this has led to job creation. He mentioned signs of growth in Flint, Michigan. He said inequality versus progress, says though inequality does exist, we cannot deny the progress. Legal and civic power by way of freedom of speech from Black leaders and activists. He listed the First Amendment guaranteeing protections that are beneficial in America. He said the ACLU president gave a speech on benefits of the First Amendment. He providing protections that lead to positive change. He noted historical impact and listed civil rights movement and several court cases that benefited Black Americans, such as the NAACP versus Alabama case. He noted identity and expression. He said having choice matters due to diversity of Black people. He reiterated protection of religion and speech. Black culture has thrived by shaping American music, fashion, language, and art. He said, though imperfect, we are provided with tools for advancement as listed throughout the premise. Okay, and then Mo's notes say Pillar 1, economic mobility. He gave Americans opportunity, measurable growth, freedom to start a business, creating generational wealth used to source Brookings Institute to highlight Black business, growth, 62% increase from 2017 to 2023, and generates over 200,000 in revenue. Pillar 2, civil and legal power with speech as action. Historic civil influence, legal protection of voice, gave example of First Amendment, clear and concise, gave examples of historical impacts of Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells, and 4 legal cases, Pillar 3. Okay, 4 legal cases. Pillar 3, identify and expression, shared how diverse Black Americans are great, summing up and tying everything together to show different benefits to Black people's lifestyle, freedom, agency, participation, rights, benefit, and measurable progress. Okay, so for Rio's premise, he did get 8s across the board. Okay, so K.O.T's premise, my notes say work conditions leave little room for work-life balance, high demand leading to working while off the clock, comparison on work hours with other nations, with U.S. ranking in the top 10. He sourced research that shows Black Americans have to work beyond the 40-hour work week to succeed, causing lack in sleep and leading to poor health and depression at a disproportionate rate. He said Blacks are more likely to work shift work. More recent study, now that was an older study. Then he showed a more recent study that said 33% income gap. He used SYKOPATHeist.org, saying the majority of Americans can't achieve minimal quality of life. He sourced the 2021 to 23 cost of living is outgrowing wages as well, and cost of healthcare. He said the American lifestyle centered around the American dream, but Blacks do not have equal opportunity. He said health disparities is a factor among Black Americans due to higher poverty rate. Low-income Americans resort to eating poorly, and this leads to diabetes and other health issues. He sourced NPR.org and said Black Americans suffer worse health outcomes than whites, not only by diet, but by poor environments and housing, as well as higher rates of violence. He sourced America has the least efficient healthcare system. He showed rates of obesity for Americans. Okay, and then Mo's notes. I hope you heard the points where I was saying Americans and Black Americans. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, because we're going to get there. All right, now Mo's notes say continues to share the American dream is centered around the work. Says the award to working more is a mental toll and health issues showed annual working hours of multiple countries. He highlighted a study from Hines showing concern of long working hours, says Americans are working longer and still not having benefits to help with health issues, and says Black Americans are 33% income gap compared to white households. He showed the source from SYKOPATHeist.org on how economic opportunity is far out of reach. Little to no wage increase as Americans are being priced out of American dream, American lifestyle as stress, diet, isolation, health decline tied to American dream, shared multiple sources on how American lifestyle is not healthy. Framework is centered around American health lifestyle, work stress, less wages, health decline, benefit equals health plus equality outcomes. Okay, and then he got 8s across the board. So at this point, Rio is up by 1 point. Okay, now we are going to get into the rebuttal. This is where things kind of started to a little bit change for me. Rio's rebuttal. He said majority of info provided did not include Black Americans. He said that he excluded all the Black Americans that benefit by good diet and athletics. He refuted Black Americans having unhealthy habits as a stereotype and gave examples eating donuts and drinking beer. He said his opponent focused on working long hours, not being beneficial, but having a job with options for overtime should be considered a benefit. As his opponent, as opponent to not having a job. I'm sorry, as opposed to not having a job. He asked, what about Black entrepreneurs and upward growth? He said his opponent painted a picture that we are worse off now than in the past. He said conditions are not ideal for everyone, but what about doctors and judges? Everyone with a job does not have diabetes, he also said. He said everyone is not locked into a 9 to 5. He challenged Ludwig Institute's source, saying it did not demonstrate Black Americans are harmed by the lifestyle, as it only talked about Americans. He said economic pressure will always exist, but Black people are not the only ones committed who commits self-deletion, I'll just say, or mass shootings, he also mentioned, at the same rate of white people. He talked about the Black story as starting at entry level and growing. He said his opponent's argument is inaccurate and gave an example of being able to call 911 if needed to go to the hospital, as opposed to calling Uber. Okay, and then Mo wrapped it up real quick. Her rebuttal, she says majority of content was for all Americans and not Black Americans, says everyone does not eat unhealthy, says working is a benefit. Okay, so for that, he got an 8 from me and he did get a 7 from Mo. And I'm not going to lie, I was between a 7 and the 8. And I'll explain why after I'm done with the notes there. Okay, now we got K.O.T's rebuttal. Reiterated, my notes say he reiterated his argument, needed to note the American lifestyle to make his argument. He said his opponent is not showing the correlation between declining health while pursuing wealth in America. He said his opponent's arguing human rights as a benefit only shows we had rights taken away. He said generational wealth was accumulated in Black history and it was taken away. He said his opponent showed growth in revenue, but did not show how we had to fight for that, more so than other groups, like Asians that benefit from grants. He said Flint only shows again we had to fight for a benefit that is automatic to other communities. He said his opponent continued to show human rights issues, things we had to fight for and work harder for. So how are these benefits? He asked, why are whites not having to fight for these things? He said we had to fight in history and still have to fight for basic human rights today. He agreed we are diverse, but the lifestyle is centered around one American dream theory. His screen was stuck on one slide that said culture and had some information. I would have advised him that I would say to you, you did not need to share your screen, K.O.T. You would have actually scored even higher with me in multiple rounds if there wasn't these technical issues. you do seem to have these consistent Wi-Fi issues. I know we talked about it before. I don't know if you're using, if you're just going off the Wi-Fi or you plugging in. I would highly recommend plugging in if you're not. And maybe making sure that you don't have a lot of stuff open in the background, because it seems to get worse when you're sharing your screen, but even when you're not sharing your screen, you are still frozen. Okay. So now Mo's notes gave direct rebuttals of fighting for the American dreams. Work hard to pay bills says how is fighting for human rights a benefit, says Americans are fighting for justice and Black Americans do not have equal rights, says we have diversity, but the Americans are too busy working, says Black Americans have to fight for benefits. Okay, and for that round, K.O.T got an 8 from me and he got a 7 from Mo. All right, now let's get into this rapid fire. All right, Rio's rapid fire. My notes say, why is this blocking what I'm putting in here? Okay, something is blocking part of my notes, so I may have to play around when I get to it. Okay, he gave beneficial definition and asked, is a Black person having a job helpful? K.O.T said having a job is helpful for everyone and beneficial for Black Americans as well. He did agree to that. I didn't see that as a concession, but we'll get into it a little bit more. He asked if K.O.T has a job and if having a social security card and a birth certificate is beneficial. K.O.T said that doesn't have that. No, it's not a benefit because you don't have to have them. Then he started to get into people that get jobs still without that information, but there was a lot of talking over because of the delay on his end. K.O.T said this is a poor correlation as other countries need ID to have a job as well. Rio asked if you're allowed to participate in a system that allows you to sustain, I think is what it says. Something is blocking my notes, a little tab that I can't get to close. Then K.O.T said yes, but if correlating that to American lifestyle is not beneficial to human rights. Then Rio asked K.O.T if he has beer and donuts, a diet of beer and donuts. K.O.T said no, but we have a diversity. He asked if he knows anyone. K.O.T said yes. He asked if that's their choice. K.O.T said some can't afford better food. Rio then asked if Black people have choice to make healthy decisions. K.O.T said no, the American lifestyle has unhealthy food and we don't control the food market. Rio then asked K.O.T if he's protected by the First Amendment. K.O.T said he was not sure, and that wouldn't be a benefit anyway. It is a human right. And then I did note there were lagging issues on K.O.T's side. Even with the lagging issues, I do think that I was clearly able to hear a lot of the responses. I don't know how it sounded on Rio's end. And when I put together the type of questions that Rio was asking compared to the type of questions Rio was asking compared to K.O.T's answer, Rio did get a 7 from me and he got an 8 from Mo. All right, now we're going to get into K.O.T's rapid fire. My notes say K.O.T asked about the Israelite that was slammed on the ground. It was hard to hear the full context of that. Rio said his answer was he's not an Israelite. And then I couldn't really hear what was being said after that. But then I did hear Rio say in other countries, Christians are also getting beheaded and not going, and that is not going on in America. K.O.T then asked, do Black Americans have to work harder to pay bills? Rio said not all and said K.O.T did not show the data. K.O.T said he did show the data. Rio then said some also choose to work overtime. K.O.T asked why are they doing that? K.O.T then said some don't finish school. Rio then says some don't finish school or get trades, so that is a result of having to work harder. K.O.T then asks, are people picking up more jobs because they can't afford things? It then became some kind of back and forth. I couldn't hear everything. Then K.O.T asked if the majority of Black Americans eat fast food. Rio said no, and that there was no proof. K.O.T then said he did show proof. K.O.T asked, does working longer hours cause mental health issues in Black Americans at a disproportionate rate? Rio said no proof, and K.O.T only showed Americans. K.O.T said no, he did show Black Americans. K.O.T then asked if Rio eats fast food. Rio said, not anymore. He asked why. And then Rio said, as a Black American, he used agency to choose to stop. K.O.T then asked if Black Americans have an equal playing field. Rio said inequality of the system does not equal lack of benefits. K.O.T asked if America is built on systematic racism. And I think Rio's answer was something around the systems, these same systems are in other countries as well. All right, so for that, K.O.T got an 8 from me, and he got a 7 from Mo. That is where I think the change happened, where it was 1 point up for Mo, giving it to Rio, and it was 1 point up for me, giving it to K.O.T. All right, now we're going to get into K.O.T's closing. My notes say K.O.T closed by saying his opponent's questions did not correlate to benefits, but human rights. And these are natural given rights that were taken away and had to be fought for. He showed his source again with studies from 1979, albeit it was an old ass horse, that said people of color work irregular hours, leading to health and other issues. Then he did show the more recent study that reiterated Black Americans face greater financial strain, often needing to work more or longer hours to manage things like bills. He showed his source on diet that says living in America is as risky as eating donuts and beer. That is what he clarified. Then he showed his study that said Blacks suffer worse health outcomes than white people, dying at a younger rate. Okay, and then Mo's notes says human rights are not benefits. Reshared the study of how people of color working long hours suffer from depression, chronic disease, said it is not a benefit to accumulate wealth and kill your health. Says Black Americans face more economic strain and have to work more hours. Shared his source from American Psychology Society, says it's risky living in America based on food choices. His claim on poor health outcomes on the American lifestyle. Okay, and for this, K.O.T got a 9 from me for his closing, and I'll explain why in a second. And then Rio got it. I'm sorry, and then K.O.T got a 8 from Mo. All right, last but not least was Rio's closing. My notes say Rio said his opponent showed Blacks having less access, but this is not the same as no access. He said his opponent confessed to having a job, and he knows K.O.T has insurance. He said we already have rights, and this is not about fighting for rights. He said his opponent agreed to having a job being beneficial. He said his opponent never defined lifestyle or benefits. He said his opponent did not talk about values or behaviors playing a factor. He said the debate is not saying things are perfect, but says he was able to prove benefits. He said his opponent only showed conditions within the system that still has benefits. Okay, and then Mo's notes say he pointed out how Black Americans have less access, says we're talking about benefits we already have. Reshared definition of lifestyle, says opponent only showed conditions, says the American lifestyle is a benefit. Okay, and the score was 8s across the board. Okay, all right. I might pull up to the after party. If Rio and K.O.T are both going to be at the after party, I might just pull up to that. Let me get back to everybody. Okay. All right. I might do that because Mo was not available. I just want to say thank you so much, Mo, for judging. Mo was already scheduled to judge tonight, but she was actually on vacation. So the fact that she came in from being with her family just to judge this debate and then step back out to be with her family is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much, Mo. We really do appreciate you. Okay. All right. Hey, Mrs. Star, peace to you. Hey, Ortet, peace. Hey, Joe. Hey, One Love, peace. All right. So we'll get ready to get out of here. I just want to close by saying a few things. So if everybody was paying attention, it was a pretty clear-cut debate. You know, Rio, he was the affirmative. He made sure to define lifestyle and benefits. He framed his argument really nicely in the beginning around that. That's why he got a 9 from me. K.O.T also did a good job letting us know what his negative argument would be. It just initially his opens tend to sound a little bit like a premise. Don't get me wrong, opens will sound like a premise sometimes, because you're letting us know what you're going to be showing. Sometimes K.O.T tends to go a little bit too much into what he's going to be showing, and when you pair that with some of the technical issues, and his, I don't know if his camera off makes it harder to hear him. Like if you see the camera on and see his mouth moving, which wouldn't really help because his camera is usually frozen. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to follow along. Not extremely hard, but I'm sure there may be some good things getting missed. But regardless, I got a very clear picture. Rio was ahead in the beginning there. Both their premises were good premises. They were pretty good premises. I started to get an idea, knowing both of them being seasoned debaters, what they were going to challenge on each other's end. When it got to the rebuttal, I felt that Rio's challenges were much more superficial, for lack of a better word, than K.O.T.'s. And I read the notes on the type of things that he started to challenge. K.O.T did give sources. Yes, some of his sources were specific to Black Americans. Some of his sources were specific to America. Rio did a good job by saying you didn't source Black Americans all the way. But what K.O.T was able to do, which allowed him to still gain some points regardless of the technical issues with me, is point out these are issues that are going on in the country altogether. So if I give a source, for example, that says all Americans' diets are really bad, that still encompasses it not being a benefit to Black Americans. And I guess what happened is he did go a step above and beyond to also show how Black Americans are disproportionately not getting benefits with an American lifestyle that is hard for everybody to keep up on. If the American lifestyle is hard for everyone, and there are so many studies that show working so much, overtime, not being able to keep up, health benefits, things like that. But then he goes and shows more studies that says there's an even bigger wealth gap when you're Black. You have even less access to food, to decent environments, to decent housing, and you have to do twice as much to try to get these benefits. He was able to do a really good job. It's so unfortunate that his technical issues constantly get in the way, because he really could have did, he won with me, but it was only by 1 point. I believe it could have been much higher, only because some of the things that I think Rio chose to rebut were on a superficial level. And then he misquoted a lot of what K.O.T did, even when it carried over to the rapid fire. He consistently was telling K.O.T what he wasn't able to show. And the reason K.O.T probably got 1 point in his closing, he got a 9 from me, because he took advantage of his closing to reshare his sources and show, here's the American stuff, but here's the Black American stuff as well. And the way he was able to frame it, all of it showed that it is not a benefit to Black Americans. In my case, the reason that it was super close is because Rio is he's a great debater. He knows how to put an argument together. If Rio would have did a better job in his rebuttal for me, because I know a lot of people are going to hinge this on the rapid fire. The rapid fire, yeah, it was some lagging, but I could hear K.O.T's answers. And some of the questions that Rio was asking, again, were superficial. Do you have a job? And then, well, do you have benefits? He didn't answer, but yeah, I know you got benefits, So some of these, yeah, is it beneficial? But K.O.T was able to come right back and say, yeah, that's beneficial. Yeah, that's a beneficial thing. Okay, that's beneficial everywhere. But let's talk about the fact that some of the things you brought up are human rights issues, not really something that's showing the lifestyle being beneficial. So regardless of his technical issues, he was able to do a good job keeping up. If you ask me, I think if Rio had done a better job in his rebuttal, maybe that would have made the difference. I think he would have won the debate only because of K.O.T's technical issues. I'm sorry, he would have won my vote, not the debate. Rio did win the debate. So for me, Rio would have got a 3-0 if he had done a little bit better there. K.O.T would have lost because of technical issues, not because of the argument he was making. I apologize. I was saying that wrong. I have to give you why he lost with a particular judge, and I was the one. So there you have it. But with that being said, Rio did win. Congratulations to you, Rio. I have been a mess with this website, y'all. When we didn't have that debate on Thursday and with the cancellations, I think both Psycho and myself checked out. Okay, I had threw myself into work, so that it is what it is. I apologize if you noticed that the website had not been updated. It is 99% updated right now. I just had to fix the standings page, but all of the debates that were put in place from the Rumble, I have now updated those on the calendar and on the home page. So hopefully there are no errors there because I was kind of rushing doing it earlier. But I will be updating the standings. We are one step closer. We do still have some debates that we have to schedule. So those of you that need to get to that 5, you are running out of time. Reminder, there will be no more Rumbles. So you got to do what you got to do to show up and be present to try to get these dates before we get too close to them, and we won't be able to schedule those dates. But again, congratulations, Rio. I do hope that you are able to show up to the after party. K.O.T, I heard you ask if the after party is on a different channel. So that might explain why you haven't been able to pull up to them. Just look here. If Psycho's available, he's going to put the link here right as I'm about to end this live, which I'm about to end right now. And you can use that link to take you over to the Black Building channel, which is where the after party goes. It would be great to see both of you. And there is no like concern about having cameras on and all that. So we should hopefully be able to hear what both of you thought about it and what happened there. Okay. All right, y'all. I'm a little bit tired, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Peace to everybody. Let me say this. Saturday is not a good night for debates. Thank you to everybody that still showed up regardless. I know it's a Saturday. People be wanting to do stuff on Saturdays. But thank you to everybody that still showed up for that. I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure Psycho does that as well. All right. So I'm going to get out of here, y'all. Peace and have a good night. See you over at the after party.